Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scouser's Morning Coffee or Tea with AmericanScouser.com. I am your host, as always, Timuchin here with my coffee. I got the grumpy thing going this morning, even though it is freaking Friday. But and Trevor is with us. Trevor, what's happening?
Not too much. Doing all right. Yeah, end of the week. Let's go.
Yeah, I know, right? Coffee, tea. What do we got going today? We got nothing going today.
My doctor said I need to hydrate more, so I'm just with boring old water.
Oh, well, I use hydration. Actually, funny you mentioned that because they always tell me, like, especially my girls that are like a lot more into health and stuff. They're like, you got to drink water, you got to drink like hydrate and stuff. And I'm like, well, 2 cups of coffee. And Jasmine is always like, that doesn't count. So I'm like, well, that's my hydration right there. Okay, so
it's a liquid.
That's my theory, but they're not buying it. Girls, they're not buying it. Alan is with us as always. Good morning, Alan. So a couple of weird things going on. Aside from the name staying as red, because yesterday there was a national team. So actually, we do like a podcast with my brother for Fenerbahce, and like whenever Fenerbahce plays, whenever Turkish national team plays. So we did that one. Yeah, that was freaking fun. The drawing with Luxembourg at home 3-3 after I talked, and I was talking about it yesterday about like I still find the team likable, the players, but how we play, how it's managed, they're kind of like too cool for school against Luxembourg. Ellen kept messaging me because he was in disbelief. And I'm like, dude, you think you're in disbelief? I'm freaking watching this shit and I am Turkish. So it's like 10 times worse. Yeah. And it was just frustrating to watch. And now I know not to bash Brandon Rodgers. I will not bash Brandon Rodgers anymore because having seen Soyuncu play yesterday, now I know why he would rather play midfielders as a center back than put Soyuncu in. That was something I was questioning. And he was brutal yesterday. I don't know. He's not playing because he is brutal or he was brutal because he hasn't been playing. I couldn't tell.
What's the chicken? What's the egg?
It was kind of like
rusty because he's not playing, or is he not playing because he's bad?
Yes, exactly. So when you look at it, it's like, oh my God, dude. I mean, otherwise, yeah, it's such a shame because there's so many good players there. You know, maybe like 15, 20 years ago, I don't want to make this like because I already did this pod with, like bashing the Turkish national team yesterday. But, 10, 15 years ago, you were like, you know what, we're just not good enough. So you were like, just do your best, guys. And then, if they lost, they draw, you were like, okay, like they're trying, they're working hard out there. Now it's like we are good enough. There are a lot of good players and play on like top teams, playing in England, playing in France, Germany, like in top teams. So they should, but it's just not a team. It just shows that you can't just get good players and like throw them in a pot and expect the soup to come out good. Because, if there's no like system, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. But apart from that, I mean, international break wise, in some ways, it's going well for Liverpool because a lot of the guys are not playing, right? I mean, that's almost like good news, at least for me.
Yeah, it's because of all the years past where we've seen guys get injured in these games that theoretically mean nothing, and then you lose them for months on end. The fact that they're not playing is, it's a breath of fresh air, seeing guys getting that extended rest. And I think only one eligible person, Costas, is going to play in the next 2 days, while everybody else that has the opportunity is either going to sit or is not going to start.
Yeah, like I say, like especially Hendo. I almost like knew Hendo was kind of going just to be with the team because he's going to be in the long run kind of a deal. But when I didn't see Robertson even on the bench the other day, but like I say, I think it's the same situation again. Like the captain is over there kind of a deal. So like I take that as good news more than anything else. Not these guys not getting that many minutes and coming back rested because we got a brutal October coming up. So a couple of crazy stories to get to. Well, let's get to the lights. Let's start with the lightest stuff first.
Yeah.
So Jose Mourinho, honestly, like it just made me chuckle more than anything else when I saw the news. But he is going to be he is in this video. It's like a character. What do you think about Jose? I always find it like an interesting, very polarizing character, but what do you make of him? Good morning, Daz.
He's a guy that is hard to always gauge because he can ingratiate himself to your fan base. He can make enemies out of everybody else. But there he is. The boss showing swagger. But it's, yeah, I prefer not to speak a seminal Jose line. But he's a guy that just wins wherever he is. And yeah, he is going to piss people off. He is going to make enemies in every league, both in his organization and outside. But if you want your club to get trophies, he's not a guy that, well, except Spurs. Sorry.
Except Spurs, yeah. But I mean,
but that seems to just be, I don't know, everybody. You can throw Sir Alex at Spurs at this point, and I don't think they'd win anything. I think they're just doomed. And they may be hexed by what we're going to be talking about a little bit down the road here, if we're being completely honest.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. With Mourinho, it's like a weird character. I don't know if he's one of those guys that if he is your manager, you're okay with it. But even then, I know like when he was at United and stuff, like my brother who's a United fan just like despised them. It's just he's one of those guys you might not like his style, but I kind of like when you watch he's a cocky bastard, and you just kind of like take that as is, and he's done a lot, with Porto and stuff. So it's not like, it's not like a Pep ordeal where he's going around and, taking advantage of, good squads. I mean, just managing and stuff. Not that that's easy. I think Pep gets a little underrated with that stuff because that's not an easy gig either. But yeah, it's like an interesting character. And I actually loved him in the studio because I think he brought that cockiness, and along that he's very candor, and I think that's what I really like about him. He's just gonna tell you what he thinks because he doesn't give a damn what you think about him or what he thinks. So I kind of like that, especially in the studio. I thought he was really good, but I saw that this morning as one of the headlines, and it's on like BBC, on ESPN and stuff, and I'm like, man, what a guy. So two stories to get to, I thought that were like the important ones. I guess let's get the Liverpool one out of the way. So make it a 3 stories. We were talking about this before we went on air. So Arthur Melo employs a fitness coach, nutritionist. There's like a whole team. It's kind of like the thing I was telling you before we went on air, like kind of thing I need to be in shape. 24 around the clock help with nutritionists and all those people trying to keep me in semi-decent shape. I just don't understand. It's almost like, if that's what I need, I don't understand why a guy like Arthur Melo. I mean, it's not like he came out of retirement. The guy was at Juventus. So is this kind of like blown out of proportion? Because there was also another report saying, oh, this was the plan all along, that he was going to use this break to kind of get in game shape and stuff like that. It just makes it even more annoying that we kept saying we're waiting for the right player. And then we get a guy who needs like a team of people to get him in shape. And then Jurgen Klopp says he must be careful with the injury-prone midfielder, which is, I guess that's why we brought him over here. We're trying to collect. If you collect them all, maybe you get a prize or something.
Yeah, not the biggest stamp of approval. Yeah, have you labeled as injury? It's not a incorrect assessment, but not the best thing that you want your coach to say before you've played a significant minute at all. But yeah, it's something where, and you were talking about it's something you would need. I was seeing it from like a professional athlete standpoint. All of this like round the clock things gave me like Rocky versus Drago training vibes. Are we going to start seeing vignettes on Liverpool.com with just him chasing chickens in the morning and then just chugging raw eggs and giving thumb to the camera in a YouTube short or something? I have no idea why you would use one of the biggest clubs in England as your rehab clinic, but it's something that I guess they did their you'd at least hope that they did their due diligence on, where, like you said, they waited this long for the quote unquote right guy. And now they are basically employing half a hospital to make sure he can come in and play 30 minutes a game. And we'll see if that does anything on any front, whether it be Champions League or the league itself.
The report does say that Arthur Melo employs these people. So at least we're not picking up the tab for this entire because I was like, if we are, instead of signing like a medical team to go around with them, we could have spent a bit more and got somebody else probably if we were paying more. But it says Arthur Melo is paying for it. So here's one of the crazier stories is the Spanish women's team is 15 players threatened to quit, and I think they pretty much quit because FA is like okay, and like they say it's like obviously anytime anyone wants to get attention, sadly now is they use the whole emotional, we're under emotional stress and stuff like that. What do you make of the story? I almost like the FA stance because it would be one thing if they came out and said, if there was some kind of like an abuse or something like that, obviously it's like a whole different story. I mean, we'll look at it differently, like inappropriate stuff going on. But this almost sounds like a bunch of people bitter at the same time. And FA basically comes out and says, well, you know what? Whatever. Because he's staying. Is that kind of like the right move, you think? So that, they don't run the asylum, if you will, and FA still makes the decisions, or when 15 people are saying it, you gotta be like, what is going on?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle there where you don't want it to be all in the hands of the players, but the fact that there is so many and they all are asking for this one thing makes you wonder why there isn't a definitive just reason yet, which it may, I'm just for the sake of the players hoping it's not something more sinister where there's just a rash of abuse that they just can't come out with yet because there needs to be a further investigation.
Yeah.
If it's something where like with their old coach, they canned him just because he was verbally abusive. That's something where I think if that was the case, they would have come out flat out and said, because they already had a precedent where this guy was verbally abusive and just overly condescending and I don't want to say mean, but just unnecessarily rude and abusive to his players. That's not a good atmosphere to like draw in more talent that you want to get into your camp and go compete for championships. In the Euros, they were knocked out, I think, in the quarterfinals this time or at the World Cup. Granted, if it's something where they are like it's like a band where you're in like a clash of just differences in just the style that you play or the formation or your role, and you are all just banding together on that front. I think that's a little weak, but it's something where I really want to I want the full reasoning to come out before I lay judgment as to whether or not this is the inmates running the asylum or this is something that this guy really needs to be held accountable for. Because as it stands right now, we don't really have that. We just have the FA going, all right, you all want to quit? Go quit. And they're going, well, don't you want to know why we want to quit?
And I don't understand. It's almost like somebody said, you know what? I'm going to send an email. And they were like, you know what? I'll send an email to. Let's all send emails. And then, like 15 people. That's a lot. 15 is a lot. It was like 4 guys, like 4 people. That's one thing. But 15 out of what? Like a squad of 24, 26 probably. Yeah. That's called up for the national team. That's crazy for them all to say the same thing. But you would assume and guess, like you're saying, just because there's a precedent set, that it wasn't as simple as people sent emails and they're like, okay, delete, and then, like call somebody else. You would think they were like, well, what is it? And there wasn't anything specific given. Having gone through this back in 2015 or something, when they, I guess, like got rid of their last one for like verbal abuse and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if like it's one of those deals where you would think they would have, checked everything before they said no first, having gone through it like recently.
Yeah.
And not just said, oh, okay, if you guys don't want to play, you guys don't want to play. I almost feel like weird for the 15 people that are being called up now instead.
Yeah, and it's something where they're throwing a lot of people into a situation that they're probably not prepared for, both in the youth people the youth women that they're calling up, and the rest of the players on the team that aren't part of the exodus, including a Ballon d'Or winner, where they're going, okay. And I think that may be a big part of why the FA is not being super just kind of like trying to make good immediately, because they're going, all right, we're keeping our best players. So I don't know if we really care about you, which in that right is awful. And yeah, it's one of those things though. There's plenty of smoke right now, but I want to know where where the fire is.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's odd, like, yeah, why are those guys not saying anything? Or is it just a matter of there's a lot of favoritism going on? So they're like, hey,
yeah,
they got nothing to complain about. Well, yeah, they're the ones being favored. So that's why they're not complaining kind of thing. But
there's a lot to this.
But okay, so let me ask you this then. If it was just that, if it was a matter of like favoritism, like these guys have their, even if they don't practice, they got their spots, whatever it is, are you okay with that? I think like the only time I would say it's okay is where there's more of like an abuse and stuff like that. Otherwise, anytime like you can kind of like gather up a crowd to say, oh, you know what, we're out of here, they're going to keep changing coaches.
Yeah, and you've seen that happen with France back in the day, where they kind of had their mutiny. And it's something where in those instances where it's just a difference of philosophy, or just not feeling that you're playing enough, that's something where you can bring that up as a professional behind closed doors and kind of make those inroads. And if it's something where there's just never going to be a middle ground, then you go about your business, and then you just quit the national team and you do what you got to do for your career at that point. Because if it's something where you are using that as kind of leverage with your club or something, and especially in Spain, where women's football is starting to really explode and these teams are starting to have a lot more money to throw around, if you could parlay a good tournament into getting a move to like Madrid or Barcelona or something like that, if any of these 15 players have that opportunity and this coach is kind of scuffing their chances to do that, yeah, you can be a little upset about it. But if it's something where you're just, oh God, this guy plays a 4-3-3 and I really don't want to do that, and
I'm not feeling this right midfielder thing.
The only thing that's I go back to the France example. That was just a few guys, but there was a few guys at the top. So it made an impact and it made changes that eventually led to kind of a bit of a French Renaissance. But it was something where they were a laughingstock for like 3 years. And if Spain doesn't want that same thing to happen to them, they got to figure. I think the FA has to take more of a stance to figure out why they want to leave, and not just go, oh, you're being petty children. Here's 15 people that are more than willing to take your spot. Hit the road.
Yeah, like if you don't like what's for dinner, then go to your room. Kind of like an ordeal they got going. Alan says, I wonder if Brandon would like the Spanish ladies team. Just a thought. Yeah, Brandon Rogers, well, he might need a gig pretty soon, but I don't. Yeah, they'll probably complain about him as well. So I don't know if he's like the ideal candidate for that. But yeah, it's just kind of an odd ordeal. And I think anytime you hear, I always feel like, what? When I hear the verbal abuse thing, because man, we've seen, I mean, I have seen personally, I got an end of some of it. I think that's usually, it becomes verbal abuse when you don't respect the person giving it, is the way I feel it, especially in coaching. Because otherwise, we're like, oh, if Klopp is really giving it to them, like just going off. But we don't say, oh, Klopp is verbally abusing like Robertson or something like that. I think, with any coaching, I mean, I've had different coaches along the way. Some of them's chewing I did not respond to as well as others. I think it's amount of like how much respect you have for that person. And I've seen it in like, heck, I mean, we see it in business life. I mean, I've been like managing for like several years. I've had assistants when one can say something and people will listen to it and respond to it, and the other one says something and it comes off more as abuse, because I think you have not earned the respect to be able to say something like that, so it ends up being verbal abuse, or you're constantly going around doing it. That verbal abuse is your style, as opposed to occasionally you let people have it, kind of a deal. So it's kind of always like a slippery slope in terms of like what's considered verbal abuse and what's kind of good old fashioned ass chewing.
Yeah, and that, I think that's what needs to come out more than anything, because if it's 15 people getting bent out of shape because of a coach yelling, then they probably shouldn't be playing for the national team to begin with. But the fact that there's that many and they're not being super specific with what is the issue in terms of what's causing the emotional distress, I just hope for their sake it's not something with a more vile back to it. And it's, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn. Like, I'm almost like, part of me says I want it to be something like not so serious, obviously, but then it turns out like these people are just whining. And if it's something more serious, then it's even more concerning than why is the FA not doing anything. But you're right.
The basic empathy is you want it to just be the simplest solution, that they're just whiny professional athletes. But if it's, you don't want to believe that it is that worse option.
Yes. I'm kind of torn, but you're right. I think there has to be a lot more coming out of this. It's not going to be something like they want it out, so they're out. Here we go, kind of a deal. So here's an other crazy story. That one, I think we're going to find out more. And this one is another one we're going to find out more, is the whole story about Pogba, his brother, witch doctors. There's a lot going on in that thing. What do you make of that story as a whole? Mind you, it's like, where do you begin? Where does it end?
This was a fun rabbit hole to go down this morning. I'll tell you that. And the thing is, I remember his brother from old FIFA games, because it was something where you'd open the lower level packs and be like, oh, I got Pogba. And it's like, oh, it's this. And it's the whole thing about it is just absolutely wild to me. And yeah, I get it that there's professional athletes that have felt that their families have tried to take too much from them at any given time and have kind of just sit down sunned them a bit and kind of cut off the funds at certain times just to show that they wear the pants in the family now. And he just, over the years, he's always been that guy that would pop up and it would just be Paul Pogba's brother. They never referred to him as Matthias Pogba. It was never his name and then Paul Pogba's brother. It was always Paul Pogba's brother, and then you'd see his name in like the second paragraph. And as a professional footballer at the same point, granted not anywhere near the same level as his brother, that has to tear at you a little bit. And then it seems from just the ramblings on these videos, there are some definite mental health issues. And I think that's one of the reasons why his last team let him go, because he was just unstable. And now you're seeing all this stuff, like you were saying, with witch doctors and some of the people that introduced him to these witch doctors who are like prominent players. And now they believe that is what won France the 2018 World Cup, was this witch doctor hexing good players on other teams. And it's just, absolutely boggles my mind. And I want to see like the financial trail with it too, because if you're Paul Pogba and you're spending, as is alleged, close to $10 million on witch doctor services, I think I need to get a change of career or something and just really, I don't know, go back to school for the occult or something. I may have missed a potential calling.
I don't think I took any of those courses as electives when I was in college. Wasted my college education by not getting any of those, because it would be a great time to update the resume and put witch doctor in there. And here's the thing, like, what are the, I mean, do you have like, he's a good witch doctor and a not so good witch doctor? Like, he's top class, man. Like, he just nails everybody. Yeah. You would think, especially if you're kind of going after other teams' players and stuff like that, the guy is scoring and you're looking at the witch doctor like, bro, like, what's up? Like, I thought you put the curse on this guy. I just don't understand how. I mean, I know like people have beliefs and some have like obviously more odd beliefs or whatever. Okay, it is, you are what you are, whatever you believe in. But Alan says, didn't do Pogba any good at United? Yeah, wouldn't you be like, hey man, like maybe he put a freaking curse on Mourinho, and then now he's rapping.
Maybe it was something where the witch doctor had a conflict of interest. And he goes, I can't go in the league. We're only sticking to internationals, because one of the ones I read that there was some friendly fire that he had him hex Mbappe before United beat PSG in the what was it, 2019 UCL quarterfinals. Yeah. I'm going, hey, that was the guy that you just countered hexed to win a World Cup, and now you're taking him out. I don't see how that does France any good.
We need to bring somebody to explain how these work. Do the hexes cancel each other out? Do they like double up on you?
Do they have a time frame that they last? Is it when the candle burns out, or when the pins fall out of the voodoo doll? I don't. And this is the thing. I don't want to I'm gonna wake up tomorrow with just like a brain hemorrhage. Because this guy's going to stumble across this and decide that I need to be punished for my disparaging remarks about his industry. I'm sorry. You're a reputable MD. I take back everything I said. Please don't hurt me.
I can see Pogba's witch doctor watching this as he's like grinding like a new potion, and he's like, "You'll see tomorrow, Trevor. You'll see tomorrow." But it's just kind of a weird story, especially at this level, man. But I don't know. It's like makes maybe more sense at this level because there is nothing else you can do, and you have this money, and so it's like a kind of like almost like a throwaway. I mean, it's like 10 million is whatever, for Pogba probably. So they're like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Is it like placing like a you'll never win parlay bet for him?
It's crazy though. Yeah, but I think that is kind of where this type of stuff resides in the sporting world, because if you're a high level athlete and you've done all of these things and just nothing works, you're like, okay, I'm training harder, or I'm doing this, or I'm paying more attention to tactics, or I'm going to these types of clinics with teammates and contemporaries, and none of this is producing results. Why don't I just call a witch doctor?
Give that a shot.
Serge Aurier, you know any good witch doctors? you have one on retainer? That's fantastic. How fortuitous. Let's go hex Portugal and all these other teams. Well, I guess he came afterwards, because they wouldn't have lost the Euros if the witch doctor play then.
I would love to know how this stuff works. So hopefully more details will come out. Like, is there like a price menu? Like, you hex one player this much, hex 3, get 1 free. Hey, all kinds of witch doctor promotions could be going on. If you do the whole team, it's a whole different rates.
Like a bulk discount.
Yes, group discount. There you go. You should. Does it go by game? Like you're saying, does it go by time? It's just kind of like an odd ordeal, and I'm sure that's going to be another story. But I mean, part of it is, I know there's I mean, you can kind of tell. I mean, would make fun of his time at United, and that's more like a United's mess than anything else. But it kind of shows when your mind is not all there. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, I think Pogba is a really, really good player who has never really applied himself to the sport. Maybe you know what I mean, like especially in the recent years, and especially for United, he's just going through the motions, doing his thing, and even then, he doesn't look terrible because he's actually a really good player. But,
Yeah.
if he kind of like, put himself into the game. But I think when your mental health is not there, I mean, when you have this much drama going on, with family, it has to affect your professional life. And obviously it affects it. And it comes out with like crazy stories like this. And it's almost like, I mean, I almost feel bad for Pogba. And I never thought I would say this because it almost feels like a guy who's in all kinds of like family drama and emotional stress and kind of being taken advantage of by a dude who's going around saying he's a witch doctor. He's like, who do you want to put hex on? Yeah, that'll be $1 million. You got money, right? Kind of a deal. I almost feel like semi bad for him because I think it's taking advantage of somebody's, and I would put it like mental health. I don't know how else to put that.
Yeah.
It's not like he built his whole career on witch doctors.
No. And it's something there where I think you're looking for that escape where you're dealing with a brother who's clearly and they had a scheme a couple years back with some like childhood friends, and his brother was supposedly in it trying to extort him.
Yeah.
Another time. And there's always just been that underlying looking over your shoulder, who's coming for you next. And if you're not in a great headspace in your own right, and he wasn't at United, like you said, it's a guy who's 5 out of 10 is better than somebody's 9 out of 10 in a lot of times. But if you're a guy that's dealing with injuries and you're dealing with just a bad string of games where you can't just get in the team consistently, even though you're a world-class player, you start to figure, what am I doing wrong? All right. And if you're that egomaniacal where you're like, it's not me, it's everybody else. And then you start going down like I said, this story is a rabbit hole. But if you're a guy that can just get pulled into that world and that deep rabbit hole of what ways can I make sure that I come out on top? Yeah, you probably end up at witch doctors at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Not the greatest thing, but it's something that I hope that when he comes back from his injury at Juventus, he's able to, I don't know, put a lot of this behind him. I don't think his brother's going to let him unless he like goes to prison, which doesn't seem likely given how many times he's come after him with extortion plans and not. Like he's continued to play professional football after all this. So it's, I hope that there's more similarly to the Spanish women. I hope that the details that come out going forward are more lighthearted and stuff that you can poke fun at and not darker things where you're going, oh man, this guy is just, he's spiraling into an absolute abyss of mental anguish. Because even if we don't want United to succeed in any way, but we don't want guys that are just human beings to be in complete agony at all times, especially when it's something familial like that, where everybody is, I don't know, it's just messy. And I hope we get more fun witch doctor stories and not more.
Yes, I think so.
The family anguish and the crap going around that.
Yeah, I think so. I think both stories, like you're saying, there's going to be a lot more coming out of it. I mean, this, like the whole Pogba thing has been going on forever. The Spanish thing is like obviously relatively new. So there should be more news on it. We'll probably talk more about it on Monday and stuff. It is kind of like really odd. I mean, you kind of like want to laugh. Part of me wants to laugh. Part of me wants, like I say, feels just odd about the whole deal because you feel like what would bring somebody to this point? And it has to be a lot to get you to that point. Are you a national team guy? Do you follow the national team, by the way? I'm assuming not because they're playing as we speak.
Oh, they and our boy Pulisic got hurt in training, so he's not playing against Japan.
He's writing his next book.
Yeah. Can't wait to read this chapter in the memoirs part 2. Greg told me to go on a run, and I went on the run, and I got hurt. If only I had stayed
I
back
didn't make that run,
just
I
like
would've.
Thomas Tuchel told me to do when I scored that amazing goal, and I told him to F off.
And yeah, it's
Karma coming back to bite me.
We'll probably get a lot of like U.S. team rants from Gally on Monday nights, I'm assuming, if he's watching the Japan game. But they're losing right now 1-0, looks like beginning of the second half. I know these are all, I mean, that's another team I think that has a ton of talent. If used properly, could be a really good team. The U.S. team has a lot of talent in there too. But sometimes, like I say, you can just collect a bunch of good players, but does not make a good team. But that's what we're stuck with this weekend. Bunch of international games. Turkey's taking on the mighty Faroe Islands, so that should be interesting. They just put some kids out there. That was the highlight of my day yesterday. Is they put this kid Ismail, who honestly, in 5 years or so, I can see him playing on a top team in Europe as a defensive midfielder. Kid is really, really good. And he came in when we were down and scored like his first debut and scores like 5 minutes into it, and he played really good. And that was the only highlights. I don't know if I'm going to have any highlights on Sunday. We will see. But we'll be back on Monday morning. Kind of like a whole weekend off for everybody. Enjoy the international games, or just screw the international games. Enjoy a weekend maybe without soccer. Honestly, the biggest thing going this weekend that I will be watching on Paramount Plus is going to be the Liverpool derby with the women's team, LFC women, taking on Everton. That's probably the only game I will be watching all weekend. We'll talk about that on Monday morning, and then obviously on Monday night podcast as well. Trevor, thanks a lot, man. Have a great weekend. Thanks to all those joining, commenting. Alan, still having fun with the bitch doctor, the female doctor. Just the female. That's a great way to end this podcast right there. I'll just like let it leave on the screen, and then we'll go. You guys have a great weekend. Take care.